Good afternoon, Mr. Minister, Ivan. Glad to be here with you. I was listening to Paul Desmarais' thank you remarks addressed to Mark Carney, and I think they were actually a perfect segue into our little session. You know, I look back on the global financial crisis of 15 years ago, and you can see how the momentum around climate change was derailed at that point in time by short-term economic requirements, rightly or wrongly. This is like deja vu all over again, or maybe not. We're into a new crisis. We're into an environment where there's polarization, misinformation on top of that, and a curiously uneven global playing field. So interesting times, a real crisis.
Totally.
But there's no reason to waste a good crisis, as they say. And as the Chinese say, with every crisis, there's an opportunity. So if we look at the imperative of decarbonization right now and what's going on, and a country like Canada, where Canada's positioned, and a huge employer and investor like Rio Tinto, how do we get aligned? How do you achieve strategic alignment to address that imperative constructively, cooperatively, in any circumstances, but more particularly right now, where we've got all of these competing imperatives? So, Mr. Minister, I will let you go first.
Wow. That's a nice introduction. By the way, hi everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. What a pleasure to be at La Conférence de Montréal. I just want to say again, what a pleasure. I hope Mark is still in the room, but Mark, what a pleasure to listen to Mark Carney over lunch. And I want to say to Gilles and Nicolas and Paul, you know, to gather people like that to have these conversations really matters. I'll tell you one thing, and it's interesting. We're saying Mark and I, we didn't prepare our remarks, obviously, but we think alike very much. I would say, I come from a week in Japan, and I spent a whole week meeting all the CEOs. Actually, the Japan Times asked me, who did you meet, Minister? I said, why don't you ask me who I did not meet? That would be much shorter as an answer in a week there. But the reality is that stability, predictability, and the rule of law is in high demand and short supply. So you start with that. You know, if you're a CEO today, you went to the financial crisis, you went to, obviously, the COVID crisis, you have experienced shortage and supply issue with microchips, and certainly what you're looking now is to have a bit more stability and predictability. So obviously Canada comes to mind, and Ivan is my good friend. We've been working significantly with Rio Tinto. The second thing that is a takeaway from me is when I was in Europe and in Japan, and it's in the word of one of the CEO of the largest company in the world. He said, it's no longer why Canada, but how Canada. And that for me was a real pleasure, because I keep saying, not everyone in the world wakes up thinking about Canada. And I'm sure that I remind Jacob, your CEO, every day when I text him. By the way, text message is the best way to get deals. So for anyone who's listening, get as many CEOs' cell phone that you can. That's what I did. That's how we got Moderna, by the way. Never met the guy, got his cell phone, bugged him so long that he said, Minister, you're going to get your plan. I said, like the vision, let's make it happen.
As long as your cell phone's working. Yeah.
Well, that's a very good one. I hope the CEO of Rogers is listening to our conference today, because I told him in no uncertain term how unacceptable it was. But to your point, I would say, and then I'll pass on to obviously Ivan, but I think what's making a huge difference today is proximity. If you talk about all the OEMs in the world, Canada is on the map, say stability, predictability, the rule of law. But the other thing, we've been blessed by geography. We have been blessed by resources. So proximity to resources, market, and assembly line. The fact that we have renewable energy and talent, I see Perrin being in the room, this is making a huge difference. I must say there's nobody that I talk to in the world today, and trust me that I do talk to a number of CEOs around the world. Everyone, you know, the Germans told me, we have noticed what's going on in Canada, Minister. So when you have people like Germany saying that, and you have the Japanese say it's no longer why, but how, it makes me feel good that we're on the right track.
Okay, well, we're going to come back to the how. Okay, we get the why, we'll come back to the how.
Well, let me build on that. I think the crisis and the challenge around the energy transition is very clear. And it's going to take government, industry and consumers to all work through that shift. But we can't wait for each other. There's been a bit of a game of chicken in the last decade, and I think that's shifted, which is very healthy. And Rio Tinto and many other companies are clear about their need to show leadership and deal with their own issues first. So decarbonise your own business, but then for a mining business like us, turn to our customers and say, how do we support them and how do we support the broader energy transition? And you can hear my accent from Australia, I'm new to Canada, new to Quebec, and I look at Canada with absolute joy. I mean, I think this has got so much opportunity, so much to give, as you just described. The foundations here are fantastic to contribute to this transition. And for Rio Tinto, this is exactly the sort of place where we want to invest more and leverage the great foundations or strengths that are here in Canada and build on the long heritage that Alcan has, nearly 100 years in Quebec.
And let me say, it's a real blessing we got Ivan in Canada. You've not gone to your first winter yet, huh?
I've done one.
Almost one. Okay, that's good. Because Ivan has been a true champion to bring back aluminium as the core business in Rio Tinto, and Jacob, the global CEO. So I must say, welcome to Canada, and sir, we're delighted because with him, I think you'll see good things happen. You'll see good things happening.
So, Ivan, before we get back to the how. And I'm pretty sure there's some good examples. But let's just talk about the costing, and green supply chains. People are talking about green commodities or ESG-friendly commodities, that kind of thing. There's a cost attached to that. Or maybe there isn't a cost attached. And how do you view that in your assessment of project opportunities at Rio Tinto? So whether you're looking at a project in Canada or elsewhere, how do you factor in that into the cost equation and the investment analysis and the overall view of cost of capital?
Well, first of all, we've signposted to the market that by the end of the decade, we'll have spent around $7.5 billion on decarbonising our business. And there's a good chunk of that's probably not going to add tremendous value to those operations. It takes carbon out, that costs money. And in some cases, we don't even have the solutions. We need to partner with others. We need to work through a lot of innovation to solve the puzzle of how do you make certain materials without the carbon involved. I'll come back to ELYSIS in a minute on aluminium. That's a breakthrough, but there are many other examples. Probably the biggest challenge of all is green steel. So first of all, we've made that commitment. Second of all, we built a $75 carbon price into our investment cases. So every investment case we look at and we assess, we build that in, and we start to understand the MAC curve and where does that project sit and what difference does it make. So we're already moving ahead. As I said, I think companies showing that kind of leadership, making those decisions and taking the measures internally is critical to actually make this shift. And we believe that the world will move and will reward that in time. Mining companies, I think, have for too long been seen as taking more than they give. And the only way we start to turn that is to genuinely shift that commitment and show that leadership up front, and then be that trusted partner for the energy transition and all the materials that are required for that.
So you're really endorsing enthusiastically in saying that, and through the actions of Rio Tinto, what Paul Desmarais was just mentioning in his remarks, you're adding concrete emphasis to that. So why don't we talk a bit about the ELYSIS project and how that's an example of cooperation and co-investment around this kind of imperative. I think it's really a great example.
Sure. Well, do you want me to start? I'll just give some context for those who don't know.
Sure.
ELYSIS is a new technology, a joint venture between Alcoa and Rio Tinto with partnership from the Canadian and Quebec governments to produce aluminium, smelt aluminium with zero carbon. Now, to put it in context, the technology we currently use here in Quebec and elsewhere around the world is 140 years old. And this is a very tough problem to solve. How do you take lots of electricity and alumina and make it without the carbon dioxide that it generates? Aluminium's a paradox. It's a material that's absolutely critical for the energy transition, but every tonne we produces at best 2 tonnes of carbon, and in many cases 16 or 18 tonnes of carbon. So it's a huge problem. So this technology, it's 20 years in the making. A lot of very, very clever scientists working here in Quebec and elsewhere have pulled together and cracked that code. And that cell's been running now since October last year. Huge amount of work to go. You know, I talk about the tonne or so that we make at the moment each day. Well, there's 68 million tonnes of aluminium produced in the world this year, primary production. So we've got a long way to go, but that's the kind of scale of challenge that's in front of us. And with Canada's support, we're on that journey. It's about how fast now we can ramp up and deploy that. And that means bringing capital, all of the talent and the people to bring that to life, and then committing long-term, because the investment decisions we're taking on a smelter is not 5 years or 10 years, it's many decades. So we really need to commit in that longer-term time frame.
And I would say to that, it's all about speed and scale. You know, when I talk to the CEOs, they say the challenge that we've been talking about, that Mark alluded to and Paul, requires us to, you know, human nature is good as thinking linearly. What we need to think now is exponentially. And if you look at the demand, you know, Canada will be the only country in the world, which I keep repeating around the world, to produce green steel, green aluminium, green batteries, and among green microchips. And once you do that, you become, even in the words of CEOs in Germany, in the car manufacturing business, they're looking at you and they say, wow, okay, because everyone wants to decarbonize their supply chain. I'll give you an example. If you talk to the CEO of Mercedes-Benz, they say that they want to be carbon neutral from the mine to the dealership.
Yeah.
This is like a moonshot project. And my pitch to CEOs, like I did with Ivan and his colleagues, is always to say, we can be part of the solution. We are the only nation on Earth, let's say in the Western world, apart probably China, which has all the critical minerals to power the economy of the future. We have abundant renewable energy. And I was in Germany with Minister Abeck, the Minister of Finance. I mean, you see the energy crisis, and Paul alluded to some decision. I could add on that because, trust me, there's a lot to that story and choices that have been made. But what is making Canada unique today is that you have the critical mineral, you have the renewable energy, and you have the currency of the future, which is talent. Talent, ecosystem, resources, that makes, I can't remember CEO of which company told me, he said, Minister, that's the perfect pitch. I've never heard a better pitch than that, because he said, I have no question, it just makes sense. So that's why you've seen that we've been able to build a completely new industry. Canadians would know in this room, and Quebecers in particular, the ecosystem of battery did not exist. This is like a puzzle. We had the mining folks. We needed the cathode active material folks. You heard Matthias from Umicore, and watch the news soon. Can scope myself on an announcement. You're going to see the full ecosystem coming around. And I see our colleagues of GM, for example, GM POSCO, Bécancour. For folks who know Bécancour, you know, I come from Shawinigan. It's not exactly the biggest city in town, you know? And now you go in Germany and people say, Minister, we're planning to go to Bécancour. The Japanese talk about Bécancour. I'm not sure you've heard that many times in your life, Bécancour in Japan. That's exactly what we've made. And that's thanks to the investment. If you saw GM and POSCO, the Koreans, which came big time. We have BSF. I mean, I was with Martin Brandmüller, the CEO in Germany. I mean, come on, Martin Brandmüller talks to me about Bécancour. Not sure that the CEO of BSF know exactly, but I took a map and showed him.
So, these are great examples, but let's focus on the how and the long-term how. You know, we all know Canada has been a natural resource-driven economy, hewers of woods, drawers of water, all that kind of stuff. How do you see this as a strategic point of inflection for this country? How are we going to make value-adding stick as part of the strategic mantra of this country? So, and you say we have the talent. I think there's a lot of us on the business side who would say, we got a talent problem, we got a manpower problem, and we've got to get more people. So what's your personal and your government's strategic view around getting a strategy, value-adding strategy that sticks?
Well, I think we have more of a manpower problem than talent problem. I mean, if you look around the world, just look at AI. And again, I'm always reminded the first time I met my colleague, Secretary Raimondo in Washington, she said, Minister, you really have a head start on AI, and Hélène is in the room. It's not very often that the Americans would tell me that we're ahead, So that is one thing that I would say, and I think we have Jean Boulet, which was with me, the Minister of Labor in Quebec. I think we all understand we need to bring more people, but the talent, I would say, while some country close their gates, we open, and I think we're the only G7 country where you can have a visa for global talent within 14 days. I mean, this is unheard of in any Western democracy. To get back to Ivan and what we've done with Rio Tinto and what we've done with Alcoa and what we've done with Algoma Steel and ArcelorMittal is really partner. When you're in government, you can take policy decision, you can certainly nudge people in the direction, but you need great partners. Rio Tinto, from the get-go, we said to them, and Ivan was part of that discussion with Jakob, we said, let's look at the future 10 years ahead. Let's look at what Canada can be for you, because you have this great install base. There's a great demand for green aluminium. Sometimes I feel I'm part of your marketing team, by the way, because I talk about ELYSIS everywhere in the world. But it sticks. But it sticks. Honestly, it sticks. When you say to people that we will be building that, I think Canada is small enough that we know each other. I'll tell you, CEOs tell me, we don't get the phone number of governors or the Secretary of Commerce, but here we get your phone number, we connect to everyone in the country. That is powerful. This is how we've done with Ivan. For example, when they had the issue and they say, Minister, what can you offer? And I say the first thing is always, the first question you get is talent, the ecosystem, and subsidies, because subsidies are the same around the world. So we can really distinguish ourselves with partnership. And I think what we've done with Rio Tinto and ELYSIS, which is a game changer in the industry. Think about Apple. All the new phone that Apple, thanks to their work, will be done with aluminium coming from Quebec. I say that around the world all the time. That sticks in the minds of people. And that's why they see in a world which is filled of turbulence, where there's a lot of challenges on all fronts, geopolitics, supply chain, they see Canada really as a place where you can have that stability and predictability you need to make key investments. But you made the investment, so.
Well, let me pick up on the 10-year, a longer-term vision, and I think that draws out your point, David. Canada's in a very good position currently. There's a lot of strengths here with the green energy or non-emitting energy available, the resources, the talent, but the scale of change is enormous. To give you a rough statistic, the amount of copper that's been produced in the world forever to now is about what we need again in the next 30 years. And you start to think through that shift, it's absolutely extraordinary. And so what we can't do is be passive or comfortable sitting here in Canada, because it's a great place to live, we have great lifestyles, good jobs, good opportunity. What we need to do is be very, very ambitious with this shift and continue to grow each of these planks. And I think the Minister's been great at challenging us to say, well, what is your long-term picture? Can you declare that? Can you show what you're going to do so that others can build their story around it? And the ecosystem of industry is what will generate the value for our business and for others. And that's ultimately what we then align around in terms of the investment. Because in some cases, these investments, as I said before, they pay out over 10, 20 years. They're not short-term decisions. So for me, the point on talent's right. We've got a lot of very good talent. We do need more people, and that is a challenge. It's hard to get people to fill roles today. We do need more green energy, and not a little more, we need a lot more. We do need to continue to work on the technology and innovation, because to break through things like hydrogen, currently it's not that efficient or economic to make. We know we need it. We would take the hydrogen tomorrow into our Vaudreuil refinery, but we can't get it in an economic form. So this is all work that we need to really accelerate. And I think the more alignment and partnership, the more likely we are to get through that at the pace we need to, and to really consolidate Canada's advantage.
So if the energy sourcing for Rio Tinto and the like is a critical element of all this to contribute to the greening of your contribution to the supply chains, and do you see that energy as being available here, and or do we need to work on that? And how do we work on that as a country with companies like Rio Tinto?
Well, and Mark just talked about it in his comments before. Over the next couple of decades, we need to have probably 3 times as much as we've got currently to electrify the existing economy, to address the growth. And if we're ambitious and we want to do more, we need even more than that. And so you start scaling it and you think, that's extraordinary. I mean, how do we get there? And that means starting now, because these projects, just to get through the approvals, working with First Nations to bring them in as partners to get access because of the broader impacts of these renewable projects, to understand how we actually deploy all of that physical work, all those projects. It's a huge piece of activity. It will take 10 years for the first round of these projects to see, production, and then beyond that. So the sooner we start, the sooner we really set our sights on a much bigger ambition, the better for me. For Rio Tinto, we look at all of the green materials we produce, and in all cases, we need lots of green energy, and more as we decarbonise. And the thing we look for is security, both in access and in price. We need certainty in price or cost, because that underpins the economics of our investment decision. And if that's going to float in the market, we're in trouble. And we've seen that elsewhere in the world where we haven't had that position, and that's created really big challenges for our business. Here in Quebec, of course, we've got a lot of self-generation, but we have ambitions way beyond that. So we need to work closely with the partners, the government here, Hydro-Quebec here, to say, well, what's that pathway? How do we grow with Quebec and grow with the broader generation?
And it's baseload, if I may say. I mean, when you talk to people around the world, these gigafactory, like the one we have attracted, LG, Stellantis, these type of things that you get, what we have in Ivan is baseload renewable. That you don't find often. Yeah, you can put a factory in some states in the United States, but Quebec, and I think all of us Quebecers were reaping the dividend of a former Premier Bourassa, which 70 years ago, at 30 years of age, had that vision to be doing hydroelectricity. Now, if you look at the 60 jurisdiction in North America, I can tell you it comes all the time in my discussion. Even people who don't really know much, they always say that's the only of the 60 jurisdiction where you have baseload renewable 100%. Canada, we're around 92% if you go across the country. But that is really making a difference. And I would say also resiliency of the grid. I mean, we had some investors who went to Texas, for example, called me back. They say, Minister, we should have listened to you because the blackout cost us $300 million. Our return on investment is way back by 10 years. Yeah. And these things really matter. So you have baseload renewable, you have stability of the grid. And Mark was absolutely right. I keep saying what you see is supply chain which are going from global to regional, and more emphasis on resiliency than pure efficiency. Right. That is a given, because people want to shorten, and the Germans call that local for local. They said, Minister, over the days, we will produce in China for China, we will produce in North America for North America, we'll produce in Europe for Europe. Now, the great benefit of Canada, and I was saying that to Ivan and his colleagues who are looking at battery plants, I was with Panasonic and many others, is that Canada, another big advantage, we're the only G7 country which has a free trade agreement with all the other G7 countries. So when you manufacture in Canada, and Mona, the president of the Treasury Board, Madam President, everything goes to Treasury Board, so you better acknowledge and be nice. And she's been good to me to approve the project last minute as I come with these deals. But one thing I can tell you is that when you go in Canada, you can take the CPTPP countries. So you have a free trade with Japan, and you have Malaysia, you have Vietnam, Australia, New Zealand. You have obviously CUSMA with our friends in the US, but you also the CETA agreement with 27. Je vois Pierre Petitgros qui est avec nous. That puts us in a unique position. Just think about the pitch. You're the only country in the world with a critical mineral to power the economy of the future. You have the only jurisdiction which has 100% renewable energy, and you have free trade agreement with all the major economies in the world, let's say of the G7. And that's a pretty powerful pitch, I would say, in today's world where people are looking where to put their bets. And that's why, but again, I keep saying there's few people who wake up thinking about Canada in the morning. So we always need to be out there and make the case. But when you make the case, and Ivan and Rio Tinto, we've been looking at a 10-year plan. That's the type of vision. I've never asked them, do you need another 20,000 square feet on your plant. Tell me where the industry is going in 20 years, 30 years. We've done that in aerospace. We've done that in biomanufacturing. We're doing that in the auto sector. We're doing that in battery. We're doing that in hydrogen. And we're going to have the base, which is cyber, quantum, and AI. And we're going to lead with these. And I think if you look at an industrial strategy to win, I would say go around the world. And many people would want to trade their seats talking to ministers around the world. I say, when you have all that, you have a winning strategy. Now it's for us to sell it and execute.
So, Ivan, I'll start with you. Are you optimistic?
About Canada, absolutely, yeah. And
He's sitting next to me. He's not going to sit.
I'm very excited. There is a huge challenge ahead. I mean, I think the work is...
It's not a no-brainer.
No.
This is a no-brainer.
There's a lot of hard work ahead, but this is meaningful. And I think about the next generations of our workforce. They care about the purpose of our business. They care about the impact that we create, and they care about the inequalities in the world. And here's a chance for us to pull all those threads together and really demonstrate that we can make a difference. And for me, in the mining business, which is not celebrated and loved universally in the world, here's a chance for us to step forward and behave a different way. So I'm very optimistic.
And you think that Rio Tinto will be able to continue to set itself apart and be a global leader from bases like Canada?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're the biggest diversified mining company in North America that no one knows about.
Yeah.
And it's not about our name, but it is about our presence and our connection with the community and the broader economy that we support. Canada is a huge base for us and an opportunity to leverage it. So I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah. And Mr. Minister, I don't need to ask you if you're optimistic. I think
some say I have a bit of energy, and I just came from Japan. So
I'll ask you the other question. If you force yourself to be pessimistic, what would keep you awake at night? That's a better question.
I always finish all my remarks by saying, let's seize the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a moment. There's a generational shift in all sorts of industry, from hydrogen to car manufacturing to natural resources. The second thing, be ambitious. I think we need to raise our level of ambition. Yeah. We need to be proud. We need to be ambitious as Canadians. And the third thing, I would say, we can, if we only believe that we can be the green supplier of choice to the world, we are going to be the green supplier of choice to the world. I remember with Pierre Fitzgibbon, when we mapped out this ecosystem of battery, you need first to visualize it, you execute, and then you optimize. I really think we can do that as Canadians, and I think with the people in the room and the people that Paul and Gilles and Nicolas have gathered, I think we can make that difference. And honestly, if you think at the big challenge of humanity, we had COVID-19 and science, technology, innovation brought us a vaccine. I think if you look at climate change, what we're doing with ELYSIS is going to be science, technology, innovation. Canada has the potential to do that. So for me, it's always, let's seize the moment, let's be ambitious, and let's become the green supplier of choice to the world. That would provide jobs, opportunities, and growth. And I think you're waving at us that you say it was good enough, but we need to move on, right?
I had another question, but
I don't know. I mean, it's,
yeah.
That's
okay.
the TV guy. Thank you, everyone. Merci.